Welcome to the Autosportradio.com 2020 show. I'm your host, Don Kay, and today we are at the Speedway Town Hall and the Speedway Cable Channel Studios. Today's show is presented, as always, by Honda and Honda HPD, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the NTT IndyCar Series, SVRA, VP Insurance and Speedway, and the old good for everybody. What did McGilvery's Pub and Eatery in Speedway. I don't know why I forgot that one. I have a guest today who I have had the privilege of meeting about probably close to 30 years ago. He was the communications director or PR director for then Mayor Steve Goldsmith. And I wanted to have the mayor on the program, and I asked him, how do I do that? He said, go see that guy. I said, who is that guy? That's Doug Boles. That's his communications director. So I walked over, introduced myself, and Doug tried to get away, but I had him by the coattail and told him what I wanted, what I was doing, and I think he had heard of it at the time. And within a week, I had the mayor on the program. He's been everything he always says he will do, and he's got to be the brightest light that the Indianapolis Motor Speedway has ever had. And speaking, of course, as the president of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, my guest, Mr. Doug Boles. Doug, thanks for the time, because I know you've got a few things going.
Well, thanks, Don. I think it has been at least over 26 years, and I still haven't been able. You still have me by my coattails. Obviously, I can't get away. I keep coming back. So, yeah. So thanks for that.
You know, excuse me. As you were growing up and got to go to the Speedway, did you ever, in your wildest dream, think maybe I could be president of this place?
No, never thought that, and still wake up today when I got up this morning and still can't believe that it's true, and it's especially so this year, as all the changes that have happened at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and having an opportunity to work alongside Roger Penske and his team. It's still for that 10-year-old walking through the gates for the first time to see his Indy 500 live, because that was the rule at our house. If I could tell that 10-year-old, hey, just wait. You think today's cool? Just wait till what's going to happen over the next 47 or 48 years. It's been pretty amazing, and I still, like I said, I get up every morning and keep waiting to wake up and find out it's a dream.
How much of a change has it been since the stewardship switch from the Hulman George family to Roger Penske and the Penske Entertainment Organization?
Well, I think this is going to be a political answer. I think there's been a lot of change, and then there's been not so much change. And I say that to mean that, you bring somebody like Roger Penske on board. Roger Penske understands what makes the Indianapolis Motor Speedway special. It's the history, it's the tradition, it's the thousands and thousands and thousands of fans who make this their annual tradition every year. And because he understands that and has embraced that, it's really allowed us to do some things around the Speedway and make some changes here at the Speedway that I think will make our fans happy. Those that weren't able to come in this past weekend, but those that are waiting to come back for the 105th running of the Indy 500, I think they'll walk in and say, wow, there's a lot changed, but there's so much that's just the same. And the foundation of this place is one of the things that Roger understands is important. And so while there's been change with Roger and his vision, there's been an awful lot of stability because of Roger and his vision and understanding what this brand is about.
I know the last time I had Mark Miles, the president and CEO of Penske Entertainment, I said as we were closing, or before I cut him off, I said, any chance that I could take a tour of the facility and take a look at it? He said, sure. I'll get Doug or I'll get John to take on a ride. I said, okay. So the time was set up, and I walked in, and they wouldn't let me in the door. The guy comes running up. Are you Don? I said, yes. He said, all right, come on in. It got checked. And he was on the phone. He said, they'll be down. I said, okay. So the elevator door opened, and it's Mark. I said, would you get the short straw? He said, no, I'm going to take you on the tour. And he and Pat took us around. Having been here since 1962 or 3 or somewhere in there, the changes are astounding. What has been done is phenomenal. If it didn't move or didn't fall down, it's been painted. Everything's been remodeled. The bathrooms are completely different than they used to be. Even to the point I went in to the museum. In fact, I went in for the Gleaners announcement the other day. and they painted the guardrail or the rail going out underneath the tunnel. And the guy was still working on it, touching it up to make it perfect. Everything here is spectacular. I mean, when people come in here next year, you go, holy smoke. He hasn't missed a thing. Trim trees, everything.
No, he hasn't missed a thing. First of all, it's funny you talk about your tour with Mark. I actually looked out the window one day and I thought, who sat with Mark out on the golf cart? And it was you out there getting that tour. So, Mark has been as engaged as all of us since Roger's taken over, and all of us have spent hours and hours and hours walking around the facility with Roger, and then helping John Lewis and the team really make the changes that were Roger's vision, and that as a group of us we kind of worked through. So as you probably noticed from your tour on the golf cart, all of us are pretty proud of what Roger's allowed us to do, and it's an awful lot of fun to show it to people for the first time, especially folks like you who've been around for a long time. And you talk about the painting. Jack and his brother are the name of two of the guys that are painting. They're Roger's guys, have been painting for Roger all over the world essentially forever. They've been living here since February to supplement our paint team, because we have an amazing paint team here on site already, but they have so much of the traditional work to do to just make sure that the facility's painted. So you're right. If you went out today, you would see those guys still painting. It's a big place. There's a lot to paint. If race fans who really know this place and they see those aerial views of the racetrack now, will realize that the tops of our walls have even been painted, which we've never done that before. But that's the thing about Roger. It's not just the big projects, it's the small details that he's really focused on. So when you take the big projects and then a bunch of little details on top of little details on top of little details, all of a sudden you walk into the place and you go, oh my gosh, it is really transformed. And it is that attention to detail that makes Roger special. And frankly, I think it's made a lot of the work we've done here so special.
And I understand that he's in town usually every week for a day or two. And the first thing he does when he comes in, he has a meeting with all the heads of all the departments. So you get to meet with him and listen to him. And the thing I found interesting from some of the people I've talked to that are at the meetings, they'll be talking about painting something, and I have something to do with the media, but they'll ask me, what do you think? He wants to get everybody's input, because you never know who's going to have an idea you hadn't thought of.
No, that's exactly true. I mean, we learned that early on too, especially as we were touring the facility thinking about issues. You could walk around and be looking at a restroom, and you could have the suite salesperson with you, and he'd start asking the suite salesperson. Or you could be in the suite, and you could have somebody that had nothing in the finance, and ask them, what do they think that the suite experience should be like? So he does want to get everybody engaged. He wants to hear what everybody has to say. It's amazing his recall in terms of people's memory, people's names, but then just conversations he's had with people over, several weeks or months ago. He'll remember when he's talked to you about something. So he doesn't forget much. But the biggest thing I think about it, and you touched on, is just how he really goes out of his way to make sure everybody's included. And I think that's been refreshing for everybody. Anytime there's an acquisition of a company and you're on a company that's being acquired, if you work for it, you never know what the backside of that acquisition looks like. And Roger's done an amazing job of coming in, making the team feel comfortable, making the team feel appreciated, and including the team in these new decisions that we're making, really because of Roger's vision.
He's got a lot of ideas of taking the Speedway, which everyone, and myself included, thought of, this is the home of the greatest single-day sporting event in the world, the Indianapolis 500. And I think early on, as I got in here for 10 or 12 or 15 years, I said, it's a big place. What? Oh, no, this is the home of the 500, the greatest single day. And when Mark came in, he had some ideas of utilizing the property, but from what I've been seeing and reading, Roger has even bigger ideas. He wants this to be an international facility for major world-class sporting events.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of a balancing act, and I appreciate Roger's approach to it because I think it's what this brand deserves. But we have, over the last several years, continued to add different events, which I think makes the facility relevant, gives people an opportunity to come out here. But Roger's asked us to really step back and take a look at all the events that we're hosting, and let's make sure that the events that we host at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway are commensurate with the brand. We want it to be special. We want it to not just be a small event, but it needs to be a national or international event. He wants to add more, but he wants to add more of the right events. So we're taking our time, looking at things, trying to figure out what makes the most sense. And definitely Roger wants to continue to grow this brand and continue to make it special. And in order to do that, the events that you have here have to be special as well.
I've been told by yourself and several others that if I were in his position, I'd be saying, holy smoke. But that's not his attitude. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, at one point in time, his corporation or something, their stock dropped tremendously, quickly. I'm sure it's probably back up by now, but that didn't even seem to faze him. Let's go on. This is an opportunity. Let's go.
His attitude through all of the craziness of COVID, through all the craziness of the stock market. He runs a public company that is subject to all those ebbs and flows and ups and downs, the roller coaster ride that is the market. There was a morning actually that he came to visit on one of his weekly visits, and I walked in the conference room, and was after a particularly difficult day in the stock market. And he said, "How are you, Doug?" And I said, "The question is, how are you?" And he kind of looked at me quizzically, and then he said, "Look, I haven't made it this far, this long without realizing that everything's an opportunity. And today is just like any other day. It's an opportunity, and that's a good thing." And so just a big smile on his face. His attitude is always that no matter the struggle, no matter how good things look or how bad things look, he believes there's an opportunity and he finds a way to take advantage of it. And he also, that kind of leader makes it a lot easier for you to show up on difficult days and work through difficult situations, because you just know that he's going to help you navigate through it. And on the backside, hopefully there's rainbows and pots of gold on the backside.
One thing that I've admired about what you do is in your position as president, which I hadn't seen from all the years I've been here, and that is you're a people person. You go out to see people. You want them to know who you are and what you represent and so forth, which to me is spectacular, because you have been kind enough. I've told you a couple of people that have been here since they were just little tiny kids, and you've taken the time to call them and thank them for coming and all that. And one guy still gets teary-eyed thinking about it. But to me, that's been a huge part of what makes Indianapolis Motor Speedway tick, is the way you represent it, and the enthusiasm you have. Obviously, you love it, and people can see that.
Yeah, and that for me, one of the things that I felt was really important, and it's really, I don't want people to know who I am. What I want people to know is what I represent, and what I represent is an organization and an event, in particular the Indianapolis 500, but all our events, and certainly the organization that really knows that we don't get to do the things we get to do every year. We don't get 105th running of the Indianapolis 500 next May 30th without all the fans. So I want them to view me as the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway staff, saying thank you. And that's really why I get out and talk to the fans. I want the fans to know that we care. We're really excited that they've decided to show up at our racetrack. It's difficult, not just financially sometimes, but it's difficult from the time commitment where you have to park, the things you have to lug in. It's an effort. And people do it year over year over year over year, and they introduce their kids and their grandkids to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and our brand. And for me, I feel like one of my biggest jobs is to go out and say thank you to fans and let them know that we as an organization care. And then the other thing by being out with the fans is you hear the struggles and the difficulties. And even this past weekend, during when we hosted the Harvest GP here, I had several fans, that are really excited to be here, can't wait to get back. And then you run into somebody who says, "Hey, I've got a problem. Here's my issue." And to be able to hear that from the fans and be able to fix that or help them solve that problem right there. I mean, at one point in time, I had somebody drop their earbuds down from the E penthouse down above one of our concession stands. I said, "Hey, okay, here, hold my jacket." And I gave him my jacket and my suit and tie, crawled out on top and picked this stuff up and brought it back to him. I mean, that's what I want them to know that the Indianapolis Motor Speedway is willing to do. It doesn't matter what you ask. We're here to help you.
How much discussion, how long did it take to decide to make the NASCAR event and IndyCar on the same weekend on the road course? Was that gone over a lot and a lot of discussion with NASCAR and so forth before that was put together?
Well, I don't know that a lot of discussion is the right word. I mean, we had a lot of discussion leading up to this year when we did Xfinity and Cup together, and then ultimately adding the IndyCar race because of COVID to the weekend. The race was so good, the Xfinity race was so good that I think we all sort of walked away from that weekend thinking we really do need to decide whether we want to make this an entire weekend on the road course or keep it road course Saturday and oval on Sunday. And just working with NASCAR as they were working through their schedule, and then the way the IndyCar schedule worked out, the ability to have an all-road racing weekend with Xfinity, IndyCar, and Cup. And by the way, we haven't announced the Xfinity race yet. I'm still hoping that's where that's the case. I can't imagine that they would ask us to do it on the oval, but So for us and for NASCAR, I think it was an easy decision to put Cup on the road course, and especially the doubleheader with IndyCar and Cup. It was a great event this year. We just couldn't have fans. I can't wait to have fans out to see it next year.
Well, it needn't be said, or I needn't say it, but I, of course, am of the old world and love ovals. And I'm sorry to see there's not a couple more added, which is not impossible from what I understand. Could be. But I have to say, last weekend's Harvest Road Race, the two of them were absolutely spectacular. Once you got to second, third, fourth, I mean, the winners were on their own. But everybody back, there was a lot of great racing. It was really fun to watch. And to your point about the Infinity race, that was a spectacular race. I haven't seen a stock car race that good in a long time. So
yeah, we were pleased with the Harvest GP, the way it worked out. The racing, I thought, was, like you said, was really good. I even thought Friday there was some significant battles up front. You had VK and Herta battling for a while, and but you're right, through the entire field there was something going on. The pit strategy was really interesting on Friday for folks that are really interested in that side of the sport. And even Sunday, towards the end of the race, with Rossi and the gang trying to chase down Will Power, I thought that was a pretty compelling race as well. And just to have people here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway in 2020 for the first time made it a really special weekend, I think, for a lot of people. And
I was really impressed when I saw in the evening news where you and Roger were out greeting fans as they came in. I looked, wow, now that had to get a lot of people's attention to see the two of you out there welcoming them to the Speedway.
Well, I was pretty excited about that Thursday morning when we opened, or that Thursday afternoon right at noon when we opened up the gates for practice, and for the first time to really host fans at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. To me, there was no more appropriate way to do that than to have Roger open up the gates. And so we talked about it, and Roger was game for doing it. And so we were just going to open up the gates and then welcome fans. And as soon as the gates opened up, Roger started walking out and literally walked down. I don't know how many customers we had out. The line went from the gate out to the roundabout and down sort of to the southeast down the roundabout. And Roger went out and gave a fist bump or an elbow bump to everybody. And I followed him behind on the opposite side doing the same thing. So to watch him, I think, have as much fun saying thank you and welcoming people to Speedways. I think the fans were just so surprised that Roger had come out to do that. It's pretty neat. You think about our fans. We've known Roger as this iconic 18-time Indianapolis 500 winner, always competitive here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. He's as iconic in terms of personalities this Speedway and this sport really has ever had. And to have him now own the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, but more importantly, own it and go out and thank the fans who stood in line to come in for the first time in 2020 was maybe one of the 3 or 4 more magical moments in my time in motorsport, was just watching that happen and hearing the fans just genuinely say, "Thank you, Roger. Thank you, Roger. Thank you, Roger." It was pretty neat.
I have yet to hear, and I get a lot of emails about everything, no matter what. Some people think I know the answers to the questions they give me, which I don't, of course, in most cases. And I ask somebody and get the answer and give it to them. But I have yet to hear anybody say, "Roger Penske, why him?" There couldn't have been a better choice. And I agree with you on that. And I'm sure most people now realize it was a good choice. I'm sure he would have rather had it at a different time, but he hasn't backed down. He hasn't stopped anything going on at the Speedway. Everything has continued. The improvements are going on. And I guarantee, I sent an email. I asked Mark if I could send an email or Facebook out on my tour. He said, sure. So I wrote it up and I sent it to him. He said, that's terrific. So I sent it out. I can't tell you how many thousands of responses I got and how many thousands of people shared it. Good grief. So that one surprised me, that many people reacted that way. But the fans are there. Have you had any indication that, I don't know if I'll be back next year, or are people ready to go?
Well, I think we had a little indication in this past weekend, the Harvest GP. I mean, there are some fans that I think, for whatever reason, aren't comfortable yet getting out in crowds. And we tried to do the best we could. We worked with the local health authorities and came up with a plan that they approved and felt like was prudent for this past weekend. And I think we'll just have to wait and see. Right now, when I talk to fans, they can't wait to come back here in 2021. I think we're all hopeful that 2021 is a much better year than 2020. And we're hopeful for some vaccines and some other things that we know are on the horizon here that should be coming out that hopefully help manage through 2021 in a way that's much different than 2020. That said, I do think, we're going to have people that it's just, they're going to feel like maybe they should put pause or push pause in terms of their trips to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway until they're more comfortable. And we've been trying to, make sure that people know that we understand when those are challenges.
The thing that impressed me on my tour was we're standing, I think we were up on Victory Circle. We walked up there and I looked across at the grandstands and I said, what are those little red patches? He had gone through and he had to do it twice. These are the seats you cannot sit on. They had already planned that. Yep. And then they changed the rules. So you had to go take them all down and move them a second time. And then of course you couldn't use them at all. It wouldn't allow anybody in. But, to me, I looked at that and I thought to myself, that's thinking ahead. You're planning how you're going to do this. This is the way to make it happen. And sure, if anybody from the health department came in and said, what do you got? Here it is. We've got it all marked out. Oh, pretty clever.
Yeah, and we'd worked with the health department on the way that structure was going to work. And actually, we had gone through the first scenario of what it might look like when we were going to be at a certain capacity, and then we were reducing it again. And when we ultimately had to make the decision that we weren't going to have fans for the Indianapolis 500, we'd ordered 150,000 of those. 150,000 of those red decals, and we'd installed about 37,000 of them at the point in time when we decided that we couldn't host the event with fans this year. And one of the things, actually, kind of a funny thing, after the first night of practice here this past weekend for the Harvest GP, our ticketing team called and said, "Hey, we're in a couple of the grandstands, and a whole bunch of the red 'Do Not Sit Here' stickers with the IMS wing and wheel logo on it are gone." And they weren't laying around, and you could easily peel them off. So I think what fans were doing were, they saw a cool little memento. Yeah. And so I sent a note to our team. I said, you know what, the neat thing about this is we work for a brand that people care enough that they want to take something that has IMS on it. And so the team was out 5:30 Friday morning reinstalling red decals. First of all, wiping the bleachers down because it was wet, right, from the dew. Yeah. So wiping that down and getting decals on there. But I'm looking forward to the next 10 years or more as we see people bringing their coolers in and finding red "Do Not Sit Here" stickers on coolers as fans come to the Speedway.
You've got a motorcycle race coming up in what, 2 weeks, I think it is?
Yeah, 2 days.
2 days. That's what I meant, 2 days.
Yeah.
What's the reaction been to that, having motorcycles run here? Is it, you got good interest from the fans?
I think when MotoGP left, there is a significant portion of our this market that would like to have a motorcycle race back. So bringing Moto America back or here for the first time as a standalone event. We're looking forward to seeing how the weekend goes. Obviously, still managing through the challenges of COVID and the number of people that you can actually have in the venue. But it'll be nice to see motorcycles back at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and Moto America is the top motorcycle racing organization in the United States, and it's sanctioned by them. So having them here, I think it'll be good, and the weather looks like it'll be fantastic. So I'm anticipating we'll get somewhat of a walk-up crowd. We're limited in the number of fans we can have, just like we were last weekend. So we'll just manage through that and look forward to a good race weekend. The first race is out here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, if you don't include the balloon race, was a motorcycle race. So it goes all the way back to our heritage and our beginnings in 1909.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting to watch. Those guys amaze me. I mean, they lay those things almost on the side, and I've never figured out why they don't slide, but they don't. It's amazing to watch them, and I think there is a daredevilish as if you drive an IndyCar 230 miles an hour around an oval, particularly. Well, is Roger looking and the team looking at bringing in, starting maybe next year or 2022, bringing in some more international events like for bringing Formula One back and stuff like that? IMSA running. Would you run a 24-hour race here?
I don't think I would ever rule that out. I think we have looked at a lot of different things. I think a 24-hour race at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway probably presents some challenges, not just for us, but I think for whatever organizing body might be the one to do that. We just hosted the Indy 8 hour, which was a GT a Challenge International event put on by SRO. So that was our first real foray into professional endurance racing to see how that went. Definitely, we keep the track in FIA Grade 1 status. There's only 2 of those tracks in the United States, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and COTA. And, if there ever was a way or a reason that F1 wanted to come back and it worked out for all of us, we'd certainly be able to host them because the track is prepared to do that. And like I said, there's right now only 2 places in the United States with that FIA licensing that would allow for an F1 race. So I think Roger's having us look at everything, and we'll work at it. And I think over the next 2, 3, 4, and 5 years, I think you'll see things evolve and new events added to our calendar.
What about entertainment? I mean, they started off with probably the best known rock band in the world, in history, actually. And how do you follow that up? But they've always been able to bring in, good quality entertainment. Are you looking at having standalone concerts at all?
Well, our focus on music really is around especially in May, around our events. Carb Day is a pretty big deal, and the Snake Pit's been a great tool for us to attract young adults under the age of 30. So we still, have those that we're trying to make sure that we manage those pieces of music. One of the benefits and maybe one of the biggest problems with starting with the Rolling Stones here as a standalone is we started with the Rolling Stones. You don't get much bigger than that. And for us, when we've talked about music, especially as a standalone, we've said, look, if we're going to do it, it needs to feel like a Rolling Stones type band. And there's just not a lot of those out there. And then it's a lot more difficult than people think. It's really a matter of finding the band that fits that, and then figuring out what their tour schedule is. What open dates do we as the Speedway have? What open dates does that particular band have? And then once you find that, making sure that there's not some sort of radius clause in another market that says, hey, Don K, you can perform in Chicago, but if you perform in Chicago, there's a 180-mile radius. You can't perform anywhere else. And a lot of bands will go through that. And then when you get to that point, they say, oh, wow, Indianapolis is inside that radius clause. And typically there's a certain amount of time that you can't play. And for us, we're really limited in the time that we can build a stage and host an event like that. So it becomes a challenge. We'd love to do it. It just has to be the right band. And then those right circumstances all have to fall together. So it isn't just as easy as saying, hey, we're going to host whatever band it is here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
Well, to wrap things up, what's on the calendar? What's upcoming for the property? Anything new? And I know I mentioned to Mark about that scoring triangle that sits down by turn 3 between 3 and 4, and he said there's going to be a change, but I can't tell you. But it's upcoming. So is there still things that Roger wants to accomplish?
Yeah. I think what will happen now, really what he wanted to do coming in was solve a lot of not necessarily big customer issues, but just customer issues. So restrooms being a perfect one, feeling safe on the backside of the grandstands and walking up and down Georgetown Road, making sure they had enough space there. A lot of the things we did this year, in fact, all the things we did this year are all about the customer experience, the new video boards underneath the paddock pinouts above the paddock, where some fans, because they sit so high in the paddock, have never been able to see video before in their Indy 500 experience, the big board behind the pagoda. A lot of those things are just about the customer experience. We've also been making a list of what are some of the larger additions that we might want to make. And I think that's what, the fall will be for sitting down with Roger, starting to think about what are those projects, what do they look like, and which one, how should we prioritize them. So I don't think we've made a decision yet on exactly what it'll be. I can just tell you that knowing that Roger runs at full speed all the time, it won't be long. We're not going to sit around and not do anything here. There'll be lots of changes, and he'll keep us moving. And I'm looking forward to what this place has in store for us in terms of new additions and the way we continue to make the fan experience better going forward.
Well, I was hugely impressed when we got the golf cart tour with Mark at what we saw and things we saw. And we went into one of the restrooms in the garage area, and we looked at the change that had been made in there. And Mark walks over toward the end, and there's the end sink at the end of was dirty. Here's the president and CEO cleaning the sink because one of the mechanics had washed his hands and there was a little grease in there. Mark cleaned it up. Not that wasn't done before, but not to the degree that I think it will be done now, with no paper towels in the restrooms. It's all blow dryers because Roger doesn't like paper towels laying around. I agree with that one. And you go to move the waste basket that's in the restroom, you can't. It's attached to the wall. It'll come off, but it won't fall down and dump. I mean, just things like that. And the stuff that we saw and the way the grounds have been maintained and manicured and the dead branches cut out of trees and new trees put, I mean, good grief. This place is really turned around, and a lot of improvements have been made that I think when people get in here, they're going to be astounded. And I've said that many times.
It's definitely been a lot of fun. One thing we learned this past weekend at the Harvest GP is there wasn't as much trash around as there usually is on one of our events. And I think a lot of it is just because it looks nicer. People are more conscientious about what they're doing. We've got a lot more trash cans out and available now than we've had in the past. If you walk in the restrooms, they are clean. They look a lot nicer. So I think all of our MO, not just Mark, all of us, if we see something, we either bend down and pick it up, or we're good at cleaning it. I often tell people what they say, what's the most important part of your job? I say, cleaning the restrooms and making sure the place looks good. I mean, I'm just a janitor in a tie at some level, and but that's really the way we all do our job. We don't let trash sit on the ground. We pick it up, and it was really impressive just to see how I think our fans even helped us keep the place clean this past weekend. And it's when it looks this good, you do second guess just throwing that Miller Lite can on the ground.
Well, as we were going back to the admin building, two things happened. First off, Mark and his cart stopped and picked up a can, I think. And as we're following along, there was something around underneath farther. So we stopped and picked it up. And we come up there. Mark said, "What do you got?" "It was trash that you didn't see." And they told us that there will be people, this will be like Disneyland. They'll have people all the time sweeping, picking stuff up. And they're going to close the restrooms every 2 or 3 hours and for 30 minutes or so and clean them all up. The fans got to love this, what's going on, what's being done. And you're right, it is all aimed at a fan experience.
Yep.
You don't love the place, say, "Oh, this is a dump, I don't want to come back." That's not going to happen. They'll have more people here now, I think.
Well, we certainly hope so.
And he's also put video screens up in places that we weren't before. So your fans, if you're sitting on the mound in turn 2, you can see what's going on behind you because there's a big screen there.
Yeah.
He and the group, and you're part of that, haven't missed much that I could see.
It's definitely been a lot of fun, and Roger's opened all the new ideas and new changes. It's just been refreshing to just to see his passion and energy and enthusiasm for the fan experience. And all I can say is I think it'll continue to just get better under his leadership.
Well, I think you're right. And I think I'm glad to see that you are still in command, because to me, you are the spokesperson for the Speedway. I mean, it's obvious you're a gearhead. You love this place. And that shows through in your willingness to talk to anybody and listen to any complaints or any compliments for that matter. I'm more into saying you did something I think is great rather than complaining. Everybody does that. So I like to say I saw what you did and appreciate it. I thank you for your time. And I always enjoy talking to you. I know it's difficult to do, but maybe twice a year we get a chance to do it. And I appreciate you taking the time to do it.
Well, thanks for having me on as always. And thanks for your continued passion and advocacy for this place, and in particular the Indy 500 and the IndyCar Series, which you love just as much as all of the people that follow you and the fans that show up in the McGilliveries. And we do it for the Indianapolis 500, and we love our IndyCar fans, our IndyCar drivers and teams, and we love NASCAR too. But it really, at the end of the day, it starts with our love for the Indy 500. And thanks for making that special.
Well, I tell you what, with the young kids coming up and the Road to Indy program, what it's providing for IndyCar, wow. There's some good times coming ahead. I hope I'm around here long enough to see some of these young kids hitting it. Thanks for your time, Doug. Appreciate it. And you'll hear from me again down the road sometime, and we'll find a time. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Our guest has been the president of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, Mr. Doug Boles. We have some upcoming events, scheduled guests, so they'll be coming up, so keep an eye out for them. Until the next time, we look forward to seeing and hearing from you. This is Don Kay saying bye.